We're on the record.
Council agenda, Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, regular Township Council meeting of September 17th, 2019.
Posting of notice. An adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the Municipal Building on December 19th, 2018, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in the Daily Record and the Newark Star Ledger on December 27, 2018, and was forwarded by fax to other local newspapers and radio stations on December 19, 2018. Council meetings are videotaped and aired on Public Access Channel 21 at 7 p.m. Sundays and Wednesdays, and are also available for viewing on www.parsippany.net.
Please rise for flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. DePiero?
Here.
Ms. Grignani?
Present.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Carriffy?
Here.
Also in attendance are Mayor Michael Soriano, Business Administrator Keith Kazmark, CFO Ann Cucci, Township Attorney Jim Lott, and Township Clerk Colette Madden. Council President, we have a quorum. You may begin.
Upcoming meetings, October 1st, 7 p.m. agenda meeting, October 15th, 7 p.m. regular meeting. Approval of minutes, regular meeting, August 20th. Agenda meeting, September 3rd.
Can we get a motion to approve?
Entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Presentations, reports, Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Council President. First, I would like to send out from the township to the Bucco family our deep felt regrets and our love for the Bucco family. Senator Bucco passed away last night, for those of you that don't know, and you know, there are many of us here that know the son quite well as well, Anthony Bucco Jr., and I'm sure that this is a hard time for him right now, so we're just sending out our loves and prayers out to the Bucco family as they grieve.
Good idea.
And you may notice that here in Town Hall, we have the black and purple bunting outside. Maybe you didn't see it because it's dark, but we're keeping it in here as well. That'll be up for, we believe, the rest of the month. This weekend, we lost someone very important and dear to us, Mayor Mimi Letts. Very small woman who cast a very long shadow. We're going to miss her a lot, but you're going to be reminded of her every time you go around town and see a gazebo. I remember the first time being invited to her home and looking in her backyard and not being surprised at all when I saw this beautiful gazebo well placed in her backyard. But she was more than just putting up gazebos in this town. She did a lot here. She was smart. She was kind. She was tenacious. She suffered no fools, and she was very thoughtful. I've said on many occasions, my wife has been touched by this as well, that Mimi Letts is a wonderful role model to put in front of young women like my daughter and for women like my wife, but she's also a good role model to put in front of 52-year-old bald guys. And she's going to be missed. Flags will remain at half-mast for the rest of the week. And I believe we're keeping the purple bunting up for the rest of the month of September in honor of our beloved and departed mayor. At this point, I feel it's appropriate, because I'm not the only one grieving this. And at your discretion, I would like to ask council members, starting from my far right, if they would like to say a few words about our departed mayor. Lorena?
I didn't know Mimi that well, but I remember Howard saying that, her husband Howard, saying that he's a Republican and she is a Democrat. And we always had very lively conversations. And he also put that in her obituary that I read this morning. May she rest in peace.
Emily?
Hanging in the mayor's conference room, where we go for our executive sessions, are the official portraits of the past mayors of Parsippany. Of the 9 images, Mayor Mimi Letts is the only woman there. I think it's important to acknowledge the trailblazer that Mayor Letts was at a time less conducive to women in positions of power. While she held the office of mayor, her decisions and executive savvy endeared her to her friends, colleagues, and constituents, and I am thankful for the path that she carved with a pragmatic approach to leadership. I'm personally honored that she supported me and offered much appreciated encouragement and insight. Mayor Mimi Letts, thank you for your enduring service to this town and its residents. You will be missed.
Paul?
Yes, I first met Mimi, we called her Mrs. Letts, back in the probably around 1979, 1980. I went to high school with her kids. I graduated high school with her son, Eric. And, you know, I had the utmost respect for Mrs. Letts back then, and that just continued throughout the last 40 plus years that I knew her. I was not on the council when she was the mayor, but just in talking to her about town stuff, and you know, it wasn't about whether you're Republican or Democrat. It was just about the town, and you know, I will always have the utmost respect for her.
Janice?
Well, this is kind of difficult for me. As I said in the Parsippany Focus, Mimi was an energetic, enthusiastic, kind, caring, thoughtful person. And of all the things she was, a loving wife, a mother, a community leader, the most important thing to me that she was my friend. And I will miss her. Thank you.
Michael?
For the 12 years that Mimi was mayor, I served with her. I knew her for many years before, and we always had a mutual respect for each other. We worked well together. Most of the time we agreed. We both had concerns about what was best for Parsippany. We both wanted to maintain and improve a quality of life in Parsippany, so on most of the issues we were lock and step in agreement. And the few times that we were not, we were always respectful to each other. During election campaigns, no shenanigans, always straightforward, stuck to the issues, just like I was attempting to do during those years. We had a lot of respect for each other, and I was really good friends with a Republican husband.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like everyone to please stand and rise for a moment of silence for our departed mayor. Amen. Please be seated. Okay, I have a couple of announcements. First off, our Fall Festival is this weekend, September 22nd at noon on Beverwick Road, North Beverwick Road. There will be live music, games, and food trucks. Leaf bags are going on sale. For more details, you could look at the emails, township email blasts, as well as the Facebook page and website, details on how to get leaf bags. On October 6th, we will have our second annual Italian Cultural Festival. lot of involvement from different community organizations, including ShopRite. They're going to have 3 different areas of food, including cheese tasting, food section and dessert section. There will be other food there like steak Rob, garlic sandwich Angus ribeye with sauteed broccoli Rob and provolone. There'll be raviolini. Who's getting hungry? Okay. Eggplant and mozzarella. There'll be handmade zeppelis there. There'll be fresh cannolis there as well. Whole Foods is going to have a free ravioli tasting for the community. They're very anxious to be great community partners here. So please come out for that as well. Denville Unico will be there with a cannoli and espresso station. And there will be rice bowls as well. Valentino's Pizza, a couple of pizza places are involved. So please come out. There will be music. There will be entertainment. And from what I'm hearing, they're trying to surprise me. An impressive, at least that's what they're saying to me, so I can't wait to see it, an impressive Italian dining area. Okay? It's supposed to mirror a little bit of Tuscany, from what I'm hearing. So there is a free shred day coming up on October 19th. I believe it's here at Town Hall, and that's happening between 9 and 12. Okay, and hoping you'll take part in that. And for my last part of my report, I would like to call up Vonda Givens from Craftsman Farms up front, and Laura Russell as well. Oh, no. Yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are. I'd like to read this proclamation into the record. Are we on here, Khalid? Whereas 2019 marks the 30th anniversary of the Stickley Museum at Craftsman Farms, which in 1989 was entrusted by the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills with the preservation and interpretation of Craftsman Farms, the early 20th century country estate of Gustav Stickley. And whereas Gustav Stickley was a major figure in the American arts and crafts movement who combined the roles of entrepreneur, designer, manufacturer, publisher, and tastemaker, and remains an internationally recognized figure for his contributions to American furniture and home design. And whereas in 1989, Craftsman Farms was acquired by the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, rescuing it from private development and setting it on a path to public use, and in 1990 it was designated a National Historic Landmark. And whereas through the efforts of the Stickley Museum at Craftsman Farms, Gustav Stickley's vision for Craftsman Farms continues to be shared through its mission to preserve and share the property with present and future generations. Now, therefore, I, Michael Soriano, Mayor of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, do hereby proclaim that I support the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the Stickley Museum at Craftsman Farms and its ongoing successful partnership with the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills, dated the 17th day of September, 2019. And I encourage everyone to take part in Craftsman Farms Fall Family Day this weekend. Okay, this Saturday, this weekend. So please come on out and support that. It's a great time for the family. So congratulations to Craftsman Farms.
There are other trustees here. Why don't you invite them up also?
Who's here?
Vonda?
Davy Willen.
No, there are already current trustees here, but there's other volunteers and
Actually,
former trustees here. Do you want to?
You're one. You should come on.
Want to come up?
You should come on.
Everybody's here.
Davy
Who wants to
Willens.
come on up?
Davy Willens, definitely. Sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's on. Go on the other side, Davy. Go on the other side.
You're good right there?
David.
For Mr. Williams to take a
No,
seat?
you can get right there.
Right there? Yeah, I mean,
Right there is good? Okay.
He's gonna be like, he's gonna be in this weird depth of focus, but okay. Thank you, Mayor.
The Davy Willens photo bomb. Mr. Council President, that concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Township Council members?
None at this time.
Just one item, Council President. The Craftsman Farms Gala is October 12th at the Mountain Club in Mountain Lakes on Howard Boulevard. Some of us on the council attended. I've been attending it for many, many years.
Yeah, but it's outside.
The Township Council will be presenting our own proclamation for Craftsman Farms at the gala.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just have a couple questions. Mr. Kazmark, the time clocks that we have, do all employees punch in?
There are a few exceptions, but the majority, great majority.
What are the exceptions?
Myself, Mr. Madden, there are a few employees who, because of the nature of their position being on the road, have the ability to clock in and out from their cell phone. That was all done with the consent of the department head who oversees those individual employees. Some do not clock in and out for lunch based upon the fact that they are on the road, and for them to come across town to clock in and out for lunch and then have to go back out into the field, that was prohibitive. I can give you a list of all the exceptions, and we maintain a list in my office.
Okay.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
Mr. President. May I ask what that's costing the township per month, or what the contract was?
Well, I can get you that number, Councilwoman. How this was arranged, this was contracted through our existing payroll company. So the time and attendance records now interface directly with Paychex, who's our payroll provider. So in addition to the accountability of who's here and when, the employees can go in online, request their time off, rather than do that by paper. In the past, it's been done, form needed to be filled out, needed to be signed. Now they go in through the internet, request vacation days, personal days, sick time, and it's automatically approved by the department head when they log in, and then it immediately interfaces with Ann's office. So the cost of the time clocks and the cost of maintaining the system is built into our payroll contract. So for me to get you that number, I'd have to extract that out, but that can easily be done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have one more thing. I know I brought up something at our last meeting, Mr. Lott, and I asked you about if township policies could be waived, if we had violations of township policies, and you said the administration could waive a policy for certain employees. Actually, this question is not for a township employee, it's for Mr. Osner. And I happen to have a beef, I'll call it, with people that do this, so I'm gonna ask him right out since he's here. If he doesn't want to answer, he doesn't have to. But there are handicap parking spots at the Knoll Country Club. Have you ever parked in those handicap parking spots?
Good evening. Yes, I've actually did park in a handicap parking spot. One day, honestly, I was bringing in some files, and honestly, the only parking spot that was available at the time was a handicap parking spot. I parked there. Shortly thereafter, I received a phone call from the administration and was reprimanded for parking in the spot. So to answer your question, Council President, the answer is yes, I did.
Only once?
From what I can remember, Council President, is I parked in that spot only once, and since then, I was informed that I do have a parking spot in the back, and I've been parking in my spot.
Okay. Because I know we have a parking spot for you.
Yeah, and guess what? First couple of weeks on the job, I had no idea. No one pointed it out. So ultimately, when I had all of these documents that I had to bring into the office, it was packed. we had a full house that day, which is a great thing, at the Knoll, but unfortunately I did not know, and I did park in that handicap parking spot, and since being reprimanded by the administration, I've never parked there since.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I was informed of my parking spot in the back.
I have, you know, personal friends and family members that are handicapped, and I happen to have a problem with people that are not handicapped parking in handicapped spots.
And guess what? You and I both actually sit on the board of Nissan's Place, which represents autistic and handicap participants. So I definitely understand you and I, we both have the same passion for our disabled population. And it was at no disrespect to anyone there. I just didn't want to park in a fire lane and block the street. So I ended up parking in a spot, and since then, I've never parked there ever again. Again, I would like to, you know, I've apologized to the administration once before. I'll apologize to the administration again. I'll apologize to the city council. I'll also apologize to everyone in the audience for parking in this in the spot. I meant no disrespect, and as I said, I've been sitting on a board that represents, you know, our disabled population for a number of years now, and I meant no disrespect by it. I just didn't want to park.
No,
in the
I'm
fire
sure you
lane.
didn't. I mean, but I know I've received a number of phone calls of someone's parking in handicapped spots at the Knoll, and then I was told it was you.
You know, again, I sincerely apologize. I thought it was better than parking in the fire lane and blocking someone from coming in or coming out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Township Attorney, Mr. Lott.
I have items for closed session tonight. That'll be it.
Business Administrator.
I
Devlin?
too have a number of items for closed session.
Township Clerk, Mr. Madden.
No report at this time, Council President. Thank you.
Township Offices, Committees, Reports.
None at this time.
Anything?
Not
No.
at this time.
Okay, bids taken, July 31st, Powder Mill Pump Station upgrades, August 7th, rental of heavy equipment, August 15th, Smithfield Park Phase 2 improvements to be taken, September 20th, elevator subcode official, quotations, proposals, qualifications, none. This time I'll entertain a motion to open up a public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani.
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy.
Yes.
Ms. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
Floor is open on any matter.
Good evening, Ken Dolsky, 21 Winfield Drive. I would like to talk for a couple of minutes about some opportunities that were missed in terms of improving the transparency in the fair share housing process with the hope that we can do better going forward. I did send copies of these remarks to a couple of people, to Paul, Khaled, and the mayor earlier today. I made two mistakes in them because I said that our agenda from the town council and the agenda from the planning board were not published online. I went back, worked through the website, and I did find them, so I apologize for that. However, I would just like to observe that while politicians and other municipal leaders talk about transparency, it takes a lot of effort to ensure that it really happens. It's not just talking about things in public and making documents available to people, but sometimes it really requires thinking through how you present information and making sure that it's easy for people to understand. Parsippany may have met its legal obligations on fair share housing information in terms of providing information to the public, and even gone beyond with a few public presentations, but I think residents are still in the dark. Certainly less than 1% of the residents truly understand what is going on and what opportunities they have for input. That's based on how hard I had to work to figure out what was going on. The town council really must think about this and go beyond the legal obligations to ensure good understanding. So the planner presentations have helped, but still left misimpressions, and unless residents knew what to ask, impactful information was not visible. Explanations of the exact nature of overlay zoning, potential impacts on nearby residents, and means by which residents could ask questions and explore options before coming to a public hearing were missing. The nomenclature used in the overlay zoning ordinances was very opaque. None had the name of the area or street address being zoned that was in the title of the ordinance. Instead, they were given IDs such as OVL5. Does anybody know what that is? No resident reading any of those titles had any idea what areas were involved. There was no discussion on the part of the council last meeting as to the implications of these overlay zone ordinances. Colette, how many people came to you after that meeting and asked for copies of those ordinances?
None.
Yeah, good. Timing was, the second point was the whole timing of the process, I don't think was well managed, and this is with hindsight. But this applies to everybody, not just the town council. The court date that was agreed upon is October 25th, which means that all ordinances have to be passed by October 1st. As on October 1st, a notice regarding the final compliance hearing for October 25th has to be published. All the final documents have to be to the court and approved by the court master by October 11th. The court master has to have all these final documents before October 11th so that he can finalize and submit his final report to the judge regarding whether the township has complied with all necessary conditions. If any document is missing or a substantive document is missing, the court master would probably not sign off that the town has fully complied, and consequently Parsippany would run the risk of not meeting the October 25th date. I understand the October 25th date was set by the court, and I don't know if there was any pushback from anyone based on working out a detailed schedule. But as the details have worked out, no matter what objections you hear tonight or on October 1st, you have to pass these ordinances or risk having the court having to ask the court for an extension. So this really doesn't give you much flexibility. So basically, you don't have much option. You got to pass them unless somebody proves the world's going to end if you don't. The next critical steps in this process will be the submission and review of site plans by the planning board. I understand there is really no good process to alert residents when a site plan for an area near them is being reviewed. I understand the planning board does publish agendas in advance of its meetings. I strongly urge the council and the planning board to clearly identify parcels of land like Arlington Plaza on its agenda and not OVL5. Lastly, I've been communicating with Ms. London about the specifics of the OVL5 ordinance and trying to understand the plan, and I do understand the planning team's thinking on these issues. And I can't say enough positive things about Ms. London and her support and responsiveness. Nevertheless, I would like to see the following changes in the ordinance. The distance between resident property lines and new housing units of 250 to 300 feet. Specified protection of the existing wooded buffer areas, even if they are protected by wetland encumbrances. Specific language requiring that the current retail space along the northern side of the plaza be kept for retail and not allowed to be used for residential purposes. A requirement to retain and maintain the existing fence along the back and sides of the plaza that would keep people from trespassing on private property. We are where we are on fair share housing. However, I will be sending the town council and the administration a letter once we are past October 25th requesting much more transparency in terms of specific information on the anticipated impacts of the plan on our residents over the coming years. And I encourage you to think about how to communicate with members of the public, maybe a monthly email from the town council about what's going on and what's important. Let residents opt into it so it's not trash email that they don't want in their inboxes, and basically help people understand these complex processes. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Adam Grignani, and I reside at 11 Rhoda Terrace, Parsippany, New Jersey. I am here tonight to make you all aware of an incident that occurred at the council meeting that was held on Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019.
Mr. Grignani, if you can just...
Council had voted...
Can you speak closer to the mic? Just need you to speak to the mic, a little bit closer to the mic.
The council had voted to adjourn the meeting, and Councilman Paul Carifi, Councilwoman Janice McCarthy, Emily Peterson, and other town officials had left the dais. My wife, Councilwoman Loretta Grignani, was still seated and had not as yet left the platform. Mayor Michael Soriano was leaving the dais, and when he passed her, very clearly said the following words so that she would hear him. You are all full of S-H-I-T. Mayor, could this have been your reaction to the fact the meeting did not go as you anticipated? I didn't want to say that word in these chambers, but that is why I spelled it out. But you can get the message. My question is to you, Mayor Soriano. What gives you the right to speak to my wife or anyone in that way? Loretta Grignani is a duly elected official in this township and should never be spoken to with that type of language. You may utter those words among people you associate with, but they should never be spoken to any woman. And I repeat, never to any woman. If anyone said those words to your family member, you would be upset, as I was then and as I am now. That is why I'm here to face you tonight. The words that you expressed are unprofessional, despicable, vindictive, as well as offensive, and should never be used in these chambers. You should be ashamed of yourself. Using that type of language towards any person, any woman, and in this case, my wife, is unacceptable. I'm standing here now asking you to apologize to Councilwoman Grignani and the rest of the council for the use of the words, "You are all," and I repeat, all, full of S-H-I-T. I'm waiting for your response.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So in other words, Mayor, you're saying that you never made those words to my wife, passing my wife.
I never said that to your wife.
Okay, Mayor.
You know what? And I apologize if anyone thought that was true. I would never talk to Loretta in that way.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I don't believe you.
Okay,
I'll believe my wife
that's your
before I
objective.
believe
You should support your wife. You should back her up and defend her. Absolutely.
I
And
am
you're-
defending her,
The fact that
because
you're
you know
cross
you
with her.
said the
No,
words.
excuse me. I'm talking.
No, I'm
the
talking.
fact.
I
The
got
fact.
the 5 minutes.
The fact that you're.
I got the
All
5
right,
minutes,
hold
Mayor.
on.
No.
All right.
Please maintain your composure, and I
Yeah,
understand
I'll
your anger.
maintain my composure.
I understand your anger, and I respect it. Okay,
Really?
but there seems to be a misunderstanding here.
No, there's no misunderstanding,
No.
Mayor. You said the words.
I would never
You
speak
know
like that to your
You
wife.
said the words.
I don't know
and
what you're
you should
talking
be
about.
man enough to admit it.
I am.
Council members, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mary Przicki, 273 Marcella Road. I do have to make this comment about Mimi Letts. When we walk, I guess I can't. When we drive around this town, people should remember everything she contributed to it. Mountain Way, Forge Pond, the Condon House, the Littleton Schoolhouse, and Livingston Park. She was a role model that every one of you up there should emanate. She brought peace to this town and to the council and to the people who lived here. They had so much respect for her. And she was my very good friend. Besides that, I came here to talk about the Livingston Benedict House and the Petersons when they came at the last council meeting. And it is one of the most historic places in Parsippany. And to put up a billboard that would detract from that area would be shameful. And I really do believe that when an ordinance was made that only 2 of those digital signs could be put up in Parsippany. Michael, I think you were on the planning board when that happened. And one of them was supposed to be at Smith Field area and the other one to be determined. Well, I think there should be a better look and a better place to put it. And I was looking around and I thought, what better place, if you have to put one of those ugly signs up, is over there by Route 80 East, and that comes on to 287 by the Lanadex complex, where the ground is low, the slope is low, and it wouldn't be visible to any residential area, but it would get the request that they needed, that they wanted it, have it on a highway, and they wanted it on Route 80. Yes, instead of Route 80 West, it would be Route 80 East, but it would also give people going on to 287 the distraction of looking at the sign. But it would be the most least effective area and to put it in as far as comes to residential or anyone else. So, you know, I mean, I don't understand if the council couldn't make that recommendation to the plant, to the Board of Adjustment when it comes, or somebody should consider that alternate site instead of putting it where Hills of Troy would be affected, and most significantly, that historic piece of property. So I wish there was a way that you can convey that to somebody. The other thing I would like to know is this Highlands Committee, we have to do a conformance policy to be accepted in there, or where do we exactly stand with that? Because I was very interested in the fact that, today my brain's not with it, but there's a town, I don't know whether it was Rockaway or Denville, that did get a grant from the Highlands Commission to study storm drain water in cooperation with private lakes. And, you know, I think that would be beneficial for Parsippany because we have 3 private lakes here, and the grant was given to cover the stormwater that entered into those lakes for water quality issues. So I was wondering, where exactly do we stand on conformance with getting into this?
Is that your only question?
Yeah, that's my only question.
Still have 40 seconds left.
Well,
you done?
somebody could answer it. Well, 40 seconds.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if you're done.
I'm done.
Okay.
40 seconds. But I'd like that question answered. Where in conformance are we for this, the conformance policy, I believe it's called?
So we filed the initial paperwork with the Highlands Commission. And the corresponding resolutions are being incorporated in the master plan document that's being prepared by the town planner, Susan Favate.
Right.
I know Vice President McCarthy has been on top of this with Susan, when the master plan is presented to the public, which will be later on this year, the Highlands component for conformance will be included in the master plan ordinances.
And then who would oversee it? The environmental committee, or would there be a special council person? Who would oversee how you would say ask for grants, et cetera, et cetera? How would that work?
Well, I think the majority of it would be run through administration.
Through you.
We will need someone from the township to be appointed as liaison to the commission, to the Highlands Commission. So I don't know whether that would be a staff member, possibly a department head level person, or a council person, but that'll be to be determined.
Okay, it would be good if it was both, I would think, so the council and administration would be aware of what was going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the
Sorry
conformance.
about the.
I have a response, if I may, on the billboards. Mary, as you know, we fought that in the courts for many years.
Yep.
And one of the sites that we had selected was down by Sharky's Dump, but they didn't like that. Ed Sinakis did all the groundwork to see where we could legally put them. Ed, I would ask if Ed could come up and just give a highlight of what we went through to try to minimize the impact in Parsippany when we addressed the billboards.
Was that Lanadex area, a corner ever considered? That's what I'd like to know.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, in fact, what we did was during that whole review process, if you recall, what we had to actually look
just need
at
you to
was-
speak a little bit more into the mic.
Oh, excuse me. I'll actually lift it up. What we had to do actually was take a look at the criteria relative to highways and interstate highways. The state has specific regulations of a distance offset it's required to be from an interchange. And unfortunately, where Lanadex is a major interchange, and there's significant distance offsets where billboards are not permitted in that zone or in that area. So that was possibly one location that we started to look at, but because of the criteria, you couldn't consider that location. There was a bunch of other locations that were also restricted as a result. So that was really the basis for our criteria.
And we had one location at the end of Grange Road.
Mhm.
The property was owned by individuals then, but the township bought that property and developed a park there.
Right.
And that came off the list too.
Exactly, because it wasn't as effective, and also to the actual litigant, it wasn't something they desired.
Mr. Snekes, just for clarification, are you saying that the billboard brought by Mrs. Peterson, full disclosure, my mother-in-law, this also affects my house, but I am curious on Mary's behalf, of course, is the Lanadex billboard that my mother-in-law presented not going to happen because of the proximity to Lanadex?
The proximity to the interchange. And I'm kind of curious myself exactly what location she was referring to. It might have been an earlier location that we were considering at a very early stage in the litigation.
My understanding is her concern is in response to an application for a use variance, I believe.
There is an application then. That's not something I was aware of.
I believe that is the case.
Okay. If that was the case, then that was not something that we addressed
No.
specifically within
I'm not aware of
trying
that
to litigate.
location then.
Yeah.
The location I was aware of is right here outside Town Hall on 287.
Correct.
Right, this is on Route 80 behind Powder Mill Towing. The intersection is Parsippany Road, where the building that will never be occupied now resides. Behind that,
Behind that building.
facing into our windows.
I was not aware of that.
Is that before the Board of Adjustment?
I don't know the status. It is, yes, it is not, no. That's where it's going to go.
All right, we
So-
were not familiar with that one.
So there hasn't been an application yet, but that's something that your planner should be aware of.
They go for variance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Council President?
Yes.
Just one comment with respect to the Highlands process. That process of conformance will involve both governing body as well as planning board and the environmental commission. And it's a quite lengthy process. It will require a review of the township master plan as well as all the township development ordinances.
Thank you.
Nick Homiak, Lake Hiawatha. Before I say what I have to say, I'd like to thank Mayor Soriano for directly dealing with the fair share housing people rather than developers when we really had no COA crisis because it was suspended, but the former administration had everybody jumping through hoops with the fear tactic. I'd also like to thank Mayor Soriano for getting Parsippany back in the Highlands conformance, which we were taken out of after doing absolutely nothing in. And I think if the council stuck together, forget about the partisanship, like Paul says, for Parsippany-ites, and maybe have a joint letter to the Highlands not coalition, to the council in behalf of that historic landmark there, because part of the conformance is they do try to preserve or enhance historic landscapes. Maybe we can prevent that sign from going up there. And with all the digital and computer, I don't understand why we need those things obstructing our vision anyway. But correct me if I'm wrong, when Adam Gagnani was up here, he said that he was offended by something that happened in December? Oh, September, okay. Well, all right. Yeah, well, I was a little, the recent letter in the paper with the description dishonest and desperate, I guess they come here to add the other word despicable, but that letter was so out of whack with the actual reality of what took place. And it defies logic that Mayor Soriano would not want to close the Carifi case. And if Mr. Carifi approached everything like he did that night ahead of time to meet with counsel and Mr. Lott in closed session to make sure that there was no anxiety or somebody is going to be sued, it all would have been taken care of, I'm sure. But to show up like that and make the grand stand, and I don't consider it a bipartisan decision. Republican, Democrat, whereas Parsippany, again, I believe Janice was trying to do the right thing because it wasn't right to begin with, but it went on and on and on. But Mr. DiPaio or Mrs. Gagnani, I remember them, they wanted to keep Mr. Inglesino, the perpetuator of all this mischief and malice, as our attorney. And I remember he was voted out one time, no confidence. He stayed anyway because the mayor had the last say. Mayor Barberio said, no, he's staying. I don't care what you think. And Paul, I remember you voting against getting him out, but he stayed anyway. He defied everything. So it's a little disappointed in that letter, and it's really not accurate. All right, I guess I'll end it at that. And I hope we are moving forward with this conformance, and especially with the storm water problems, to try to save some of these lakes that we still don't have. Or instead of like no Lake Hiawatha, we're going to have no Lake Parsippany. All right, so thank you.
Nick, I'd just like to state, the council, matter of fact, I know I met with you, I met with Mr. Dalsky. You guys provided me with a lot of information. I know the council, we were we pushed, remember we had the presentation by the Highlands? All of us were in favor of that. We all voted for it. So,
Paul, we were in the Highlands. Mr. Inglesino took us out.
I know we were. I know.
And
what I'm just saying is all of us were in favor of getting back in. So, I just wanted to let you know. I mean, I know it's been a long process, but we're getting there. But all of us were involved in that.
We should have been.
Mr. Dalsky gave me a lot of valuable information in reference to that, as well as you did.
Well, but nobody was listening to me. I was like the boy's pet chimp. Nobody was paying attention because Mr. Inglesino was the top banana, the ace. But we should have been saving as much land as we could, because we knew we had a lot of vacant property anyway, and we should have, like Waterview, I hate to say it, and everything, would have never been taken by affordable housing. It was steep sloped, it was environmentally sensitive. COA housing doesn't consider that type of landscape initially, but we gave in. We gave them the variance, we got rid of the steep slope ordinance, and that was all, it just wasn't right. And the grassroots movement and everything, and it was all sabotaged by the other administration. So, all right.
Thank you.
My name is Davey Willens. I live at 8 Jamaica Road. I'm going to do something I've never done. Come in front of you without a prepared presentation because my heart's moved. Thank you for the tribute to Mayor Letts. Thank you for reminding us that she was married to a Republican. And I would like us to stop talking about a D or an R behind everybody's name. I have to say, I personally know every one of you that serves. And I know in my heart that you worked with me, for me, and know that the best interest of this town is in your heart. It's not an R or a D behind it. Stop acting that way. It really breaks my heart in our country and in this town that it's the divisiveness that we can't see what's good for what you were elected to serve gets in the way of political agenda. Stop it, please. God bless you all for serving.
Pat Pataccio, 182 Hawkins Avenue. Could you tell us how long it will take for the compliance for the Highlands, how long it should take?
Well, is that?
No.
You have
that's-
more?
that's-
Okay,
I
go
have
ahead.
more. The other question I wanted was last week, we were discussing Mr. Yodis and the fact that he got insurance prior to the 60 days. And it was said that the mayor could waive it. And you had said something like, you can find that information. Where can I find that information? If I open it, what am I opening? That allows.
Do you have any other questions, Pat?
I think my answer would be two-part without doing the research, and that would be that the township maintains a self-insurance program, and I believe that program gives the administration the right to waive the requirements of eligibility, and I think it may also be in the employee handbook as well. The length of the conformance process, I think I'm going to need to speak to Ms. Favade about that, because that's a discussion between her and the Highlands Council representatives. All right.
And the only other thing I want to state is the Karifi matter, once again. I thought it was all said and done. And, you know, it's like, we know he has lawsuits against the township. He has every right to have lawsuits against the township. But the holding of his vacation pay and everything else, it was contracted to him. And it just looks like and feels like you're using that, you're holding it hostage in order for him to conform to what you want. And I found that very upsetting. Thank you.
Mr. Council President, may I respond?
Good.
Ms. Pataccia, I've been steadfast in my agreement that Captain Karifi's benefit time payment should have been paid to him in 2013. It was not the right thing to do back then. You know, he retired, and personally, it's never been in dispute, okay? And I believe the prior administration should never have withheld payment. With that said, however, none of the decisions this council has made in the past month eliminates the multiple lawsuits against the township. Should a release be signed to settle these litigations, this can all be put behind us without that. We could very well lose insurance coverage in these cases, which puts our taxpayers at risk. We would be paying for everything in cash, including legal fees. That's not what I want to do to the taxpayers. It's also may very well put our AA bond rating in jeopardy. That makes it difficult for us to take out loans to pay for this to begin with. I maintain it that last year, once I became fully aware of the facts and got behind the wheel and saw what had happened and saw the documents, that he was targeted as retaliation.
Council President,
So,
I would respectfully ask that the mayor, we talk about this in closed session tonight. It's on the agenda.
thank you, Mr. Lott. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Eric Densmore, 95 Mara Road, Lake Hiawatha. I have two issues, or two questions. Hopefully these are not hot button issues, but I would like the answers to them. Number one, a couple of months ago, the council brought up the issue with respect to having shared services with the town of Montville for EMS. At that time, I had expressed some concerns over the response times getting longer. And I was just curious to see what is happening with respect to that. The second issue I want to bring up, totally unrelated, has to do actually with the Parsippany movie theater just across the street. My wife and I are big movie fans, and we go there quite frequently. They have advertised that they're doing renovations, but they haven't started yet. And if you walk in there, the place is just absolutely empty. Okay, it was even empty when the Avengers movie came out. And I had a conversation with the manager the other day, and I asked, how come you haven't started the renovations yet? You've been saying you've been in renovations for 6 months and you haven't started yet. And the manager indicated to me that the town was holding up all of the permits. I am not sure if that is true or not, but it's a very convenient place to see a movie. It's a very convenient place for kids to go. You don't have to fight the mall traffic that you do in the other towns for movie theaters. I would hate to see that movie theater go out of business, because unless it can modernize, it's not going to be able to compete with the AMC theaters around here. And I would really just hate to see that the reason that this is being held up is because the buildings department or whoever handles it hasn't approved the permits, because I think it's a good entertainment business for the town. So that's all.
Through you, Council President.
Good.
Mr. Dinsmore, that agreement with Montville was approved by the council after meetings with the volunteers. I believe Chief Snook is with us. Dean, are you here?
Mm-hmm.
If you could just come forward and just discuss the response. That's pretty good, huh? If you could just come forward and discuss the.
Now, that's what I call good response time.
There you go.
See?
That's outstanding. If you could just discuss that, but before you do, I just want to state that that the agreement that was ultimately presented and approved by the council was complete with all of the concerns and recommendations of the volunteer squads in town. So their concerns that were expressed at that meeting through the council president were taken into account before the final document was produced. Dean?
Sure. I'm sorry. Who actually asked the question? Because I was stepped to the side over there. So great question. And probably if more people ask these questions, we could inform people a little more than we do. But the long and short of it is that how we do anything when we do any type of shared service, or if you want to call it mutual aid or whatever words you'd like to use, because there's different things, we're able to support some of the other towns because Parsippany is unique compared to some of our neighboring towns where we have career staff on duty 24/7 for EMS, as well as supplementation with our volunteer partners from the Rockaway Neck Ambulance Squad and Parsippany Volunteer Ambulance. So it's kind of a twofold approach where if one of the ambulances is helping out another town, you're going to get one of the other ambulances in town. We have GPS tracking in all of our vehicles, so like right now I can go out to my car and I can see where every on-duty ambulance is. So what we do, especially during the higher call volume times during the daytime, is if there's a call, let's say, over on Mara Road in Lake Hiawatha and the ambulance is there, the ambulance from the other side of town kind of moves down. We call it a central post, so we kind of come down to the area of like Parsippany Road and Route 202. So that's basically what we do based on our call volume, and then we have agreements with St. Clair's Hospital's ambulance service, as well as Morris County EMS and Cedar Knolls Fire Department's ambulance. So if we're not available, we'll call them in immediately if we know that we can't respond. So we try to keep on top of that as best we can. One thing that is unique about Parsippany as a whole, there could be absolutely nothing going on. That's good, right? Everybody's healthy, happy, nobody's injured, and there are 4 or 5 medical calls within 10 minutes of each other. And that happens probably more often than not. And I will tell you that the one thing that the residents and visitors of this town enjoy that they don't even know is that we usually manage to cover every one of our calls without having to call another agency in. Sometimes we do, but usually Parsippany is the one who everybody else is calling for help. So to answer your question specifically regarding response times, anybody up here will tell you that I'm like a hawk watching response times. So